has a ghost story that's been passed down through the generations. But what if those legends were true? My name is Miranda Young, and I'm the Ghost Biker. Hey everybody, happy Thursday night. We are back live here at the Ghost Biker Garage. It's been a minute because over the last month and I guess about a month and a half now, we have had Ghost Biker Explorations Season 8. And so we just wrapped that up, getting ready for the new year. And so what better way than to get back into the garage with some amazing guests. And so I'm extremely excited to have tonight's guest on because I had the honor of meeting him in person last month. And so, which we'll get into all of that here in just a little bit, but we got to talk while we met there at GoblinCon. And I'm really excited to be able to continue the conversation further. So, but thank you all so much for sticking with us through the season, sticking with us through the year, and helping us wrap everything up over the next couple of weeks as we welcome some great guests. Before I get into tonight's guests, I do want to mention we will not be having a show next Thursday night because of Thanksgiving, but I will be having a guest on that you guys know that you've probably seen in the chat room quite a bit. My dear friend, Miss Dee Dee Jabrell, the dream interpreter. I just received my 30-day dream mapping journal today that I got, and I'm really excited to try this. She just released this book, and so I'm going to be sharing the link later on, but she will be my guest on December 4th. So I'm going to post the link up here. So if you're interested, I know a lot of you have some great questions for the dream interpreter. And so I'm going to put the link where you can get your book and have that and do start your dream journal before we have Miss Dee Dee on the show in 2 weeks. So but we'll talk about that a little bit more before the end of the night. Also, we've still got tours and such going on throughout the end of the year. We're getting ready to kick off our Christmas ghost tours at the historic Scott County Jail. I'm going to pull that link up here. If you go to historyhighwayshaunts.com or historicscottcojail.com, you can see the link to to our ghost walk that we have. It's only going to be on 3 weeks during our 3 Saturdays during the month of December. And that's going to take you on a 45-minute tour of the town of Huntsville, where we're going to be sharing different ghostly stories and legends from the town itself. We're going to be walking through the beautiful Christmas lights because Huntsville does a great job with their lights display. And then that's going to end with an hour and 15-minute tour of the jail by flashlight, where we take you in and we show you video, photo, and audio evidence of things that have been captured there in the jail. So we're revising the tradition of telling ghost stories at Christmas. So, like I said, those are for 3 weeks only. And that is a 2-hour tour there. And you can find that information on historicscottcojail.com or the Historic Scott County Jail Facebook page as well. But we'll talk all about that here in just a little bit. But let me say hello to the folks over here in the chat room. Again, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. We've got Miss Sonia Thompson from The Walking Dead on here. Daryl Paulette, how are you doing, good sir? From Clover Hill Village and the haunted Appomattox jail up there in Appomattox, Virginia, as well as Bedford Paranormal. Nancy Weems, it's always great to see you. Miss Mona James, hello. Thank you for your very kind messages. And I want to thank you all for your messages that you sent me this past week. I know I was feeling a little bit under the weather, and tonight's guest was gracious enough to reschedule for tonight. So thank you all for your very kind messages, your prayers, your thoughts. Trust me, it is very, very much appreciated. Hello to we've got Bob Burnell on here, as well as Brittany Overton, Miss Kim Brady. Hello, and to all of you over in the chat room that's watching that hasn't spoke. Hello, and thank you so much for watching. So I don't really want to waste much time getting to tonight's guest because, like I said, he has taken a lot of time out of his schedule to come on and talk about some of the great things that he's doing. And if you guys have any questions over here in the chat room for either myself or for tonight's guests, if you don't mind, just put them in all caps. That way I'll make sure that I don't miss you. And once we get to a break in our conversation, we'll definitely pull those comments up and get to those comments and questions. So, hey, James Brady, Melvin Brazel, it's great to see you guys. Now, I'm just going to do a brief introduction because, it won't do tonight's guest justice. So, because I want him to go on and talk about himself, but he is actually best known for his research and books about history, legends, and lore here in the American South, and his epic investigations of the paranormal. His experience in the field spans more than 4 decades. His work has been featured in major newspapers and magazines, and he has over 300 radio and TV gigs to his credit, including appearances on the Learning Channel, the Travel Channel, Turner South, and A&E. He also appeared in the 2006 motion picture DVD An American Haunting, starring Sissy Spacek and Daniel Sutherland. When not researching cases and sharing his findings on radio and TV, Pat Fitzhugh can be found speaking at paranormal conferences, storytelling, teaching classes on paranormal research, and leading live professional investigations of America's most haunted locations. For me, he's definitely, or in my opinion, I believe he is probably one of the most authorities on one of our here in Tennessee, one of our local hauntings. So, so if you will, please help me in welcoming my friend, Mr. Pat Fitzhugh. Hey, Pat.
Hey, hello.
Thank you so much for coming on tonight and sharing a little bit of your time and a lot of your knowledge and expertise about the paranormal.
Oh, well, I'm glad to be here. Definitely glad to be here. It's a pleasure to be here and an honor to be here.
Wonderful. Well, I got to say, that was one of my highlights of being over there at Goblin Con was getting to get to meet you in person as well as spend a little time talking.
Oh, yeah, same here for sure. I'd heard of you before, and I think I'd seen your show a few times, but just, we never had gotten to meet. So then I saw you there, and I'm like, yay, another person I've been wanting to meet and talk to and learn from. But that Goblin Con, this was the first year. And I mean, that just blew me away with all the attendance and everything. It was very well done for a first year conference.
Absolutely. And, because I know you've done a lot of speaking conventions and myself as well. And out of all the different conventions that I've done, this has probably been the best first year convention that I've ever done. I mean, they were doing things that I've not seen conventions that have been around for a very long time do. And that really says a lot when you have that type of attendance and that type of excitement, as well as just the caliber of speakers that they had there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. For a first year conference, could not ask for better. And I know Eric, as well as the people from Hopkinsville, they did a really good job. I did a lot of meticulous planning and brought everything together nicely.
Yeah, they thought of all the fine details, which I think, sometimes you get in doing something you're always learning when you do these conventions. I think having the city behind it was a really I mean, it was a really big deal for anywhere, but I think that really helped.
Yeah, it's always better to have them behind you instead of against you, right?
Absolutely. And doing what we do, sometimes that's a challenge to
Oh,
that
yeah.
we all face a lot. Yeah. And so, so Pat, I just did a brief introduction from your website there, but if you will, please tell the folks there that maybe haven't heard of you, which I think a lot of the folks over here have, but if they haven't, tell us who you are and how you got started here in the paranormal.
Okay, well, my name is Pat. I'm just an old boy from Tennessee. I've always been fascinated with the paranormal, anything spooky. When I was a kid, Halloween was and still is my favorite time of the year. And later on, I became interested from the standpoint of, is this stuff real? Is it not real? Is it partially real or what? And then I became interested in the research aspects of it. And I spent many years researching a lot of different cases, doing a lot of investigations. Then at one point, I started writing books and, adding that.
Okay.
So it's been
Now,
a long ride.
well, I mean, did when that's the case, I know a lot of the time some people are newer in the field and such. Did you have any experiences growing up that maybe led you in that direction, or was it more from a standpoint of more like the folklore side of things?
Well, when I was 12 years old, I went with another guy and we put a tape recorder, an old Radio Shack tape recorder, which is all they had back then, into an old abandoned house. We let the thing record after we left, and then of course the battery ran down. But then we came back and retrieved the tape. We heard a lot of squealing and screeching and even screaming on that tape, but yet there was nobody there at that house. I mean, it was abandoned and it was very far off the beaten path. I don't have any explanation for what it was, but at the same time, it really fascinated me, especially, being so young. And since then, from time to time, I've run into some uh, pretty strange experiences, some of which I was not able to explain. So yeah, it's been pretty fun and have a few experiences here and there. And, as a researcher, I think sometimes the greatest experiences I have are when I have new findings
Yeah,
and also some of the people I meet. You meet a lot of great people, you learn a lot from a lot of different people, and some people are even more scary than the dead. The living
absolutely.
more scary than the dead. So I've had a few of those too. So
Absolutely.
a lot of
Um,
different experiences over the years.
can you talk about any of those findings that have maybe propelled you forward to get you to the point that you are today?
Well, I don't know of any one particular one that was like a holy grail finding, but there was a lot of work needed to be done with the Bell Witch story.
Hmm.
It was for a long time. It was a local, regional story, and then with the advent of the internet and bellwitch.org, plus some movies out there such as the Bear Witch, excuse me, the Blair, not Bear Witch,
Yeah,
sorry, the Blair Witch Project, An American Haunting, and other things. A lot more people became familiar with it, and a lot of misunderstanding came about. A lot of disinformation was put out everywhere. So I, I dug into that. I've actually dug into that ever since I was like 13 years old. But I decided that about that time it was time to go ahead and put out a book with my findings. And I think that was one of the main things that helped me or gave me more confidence is that all this information I had learned, I was able to put it out there and hopefully dispel a lot of myths along the way and increase focus and understanding.
I love that because the Bell Witch is something that has been something we've heard over here in East Tennessee. I know it's a more of a Middle Tennessee thing, but it's something we've heard over here since I was a kid. Our librarian every Halloween was telling us the story of the Bell Witch, and it's become really a Tennessee treasure. And like you said, with the advent of the internet and such. that story has gotten even further out there. But for any of the folks over in the chat room that is not familiar with the Bell Witch, or maybe isn't from around here, can you give just kind of a brief synopsis of what the Bell Witch is?
Well, the Bell Witch legend that most of us know, and the most popular version, which is a Tennessee version, centered on the family of John Bell in the early 1800s in northwestern Middle Tennessee. They were forced to endure a 4-year visit by an unknown entity that started out kind of like what you would call a shapeshifter, with some sightings and apparitions seen in the field, then developed into a poltergeist type entity, then later into something intelligent. And this lasted for a period of 4 years. But people have
Wow.
always experienced a lot of strange things up in that area.
Now,
It
are you
involved real
originally
people, real places.
now are you originally from that area?
Originally from Nashville.
Okay.
Now,
Okay.
my mother was born there about 2 miles from Ground Zero, born and had her
Oh,
early years up there in the Cedar Hill area, and then finished her growing up at another place over there in Robertson County. So, yeah, my mother was a local.
okay. And I guess like anything else with stories that tend to grow over time, like you said, there have been a lot of misconceptions and a lot of incorrect versions of that story.
Yeah, the more you tell a story, the farther it travels, the bigger it gets. And, years ago, even before I wrote a book, I set forth some ground rules that were going to govern what I do. And I've always stuck to those. And one of those is make sure that at least the historical backdrop is correct. There's some things you can never know that's going to be correct because of the passage of time and other reasons, but we at least need to put everything in the correct historical context. So that was very
Absolutely.
important. And oftentimes you'll find that if you get the full historical context and do a lot of research into the backstory, you can easily dispel a lot of the popular myths around the story and start peeling back those layers so you can get down right to the core.
Absolutely, and I love that because that's what we try to do with our locations that we have.
Yeah.
That's why every time we do the tours, telling the history is extremely important because that with that history, you're able to have that context and you're able to really kind of even get some questions answered when it comes to some of the paranormal activity that we're having. So I love that you do that, and that's such a great principle to have, especially as an author and with a story as big as the Bell Witch.
Yeah, that's, it can be challenging too. When I give my lectures, I let people know that I'm a storyteller and entertainer, but I'm also a researcher. So the challenge for me is telling the story and trying to scare the bejeepers out of people, but at the same time, and sprinkling some of my research on top of the story as I tell it. Typically after a lecture and we get the Q&A, that's when I really get to share my research. But yeah, it's a pretty big challenge, to do both. And I also let people know one of my other guidelines is I'm a balanced researcher. Everything is 50% paranormal and 50% non-paranormal. That's the way I
Oh,
approach everything on the fence. There are several paranormal theories about the Bell Witch that I support. There are also several skeptical theories that I support. I'm the one who digs the information, I analyze it, and then I share my findings. And then it's up to everybody else, to draw their own conclusions. Now, the new book I'm coming out with is going to be a little different in that it's not going to be another Bell Witch storybook. And I'm not going to use it to criticize or debunk any of the existing theories. But moreover, I'm going to provide a brand new lens, if you will, for people to view that entire case through. So not only will it be a
oh.
new, never heard of before theory, but also a new lens to view the whole story through. So
Now
that's
that's
coming.
exciting. That's very exciting. I'm going to actually pull up right here because one of the things we mentioned is that you have some different books. So I want to pull up where folks, let's see, the books that you have here so that if folks like to order, um, we're going to share the link on here. Let me just copy that. While I'm copying the link, if you wouldn't mind speaking a little bit about your books, that way, folks, if folks would like to purchase one, they can do
Okay.
that.
Okay, so let's start out with the Bell Witch Haunting over there on the lower right-hand corner. Uh, First of all, the middle book, The Bell Witch, The Full Account, that one took several years to write.
Mhm.
And the book industry had already been put on notice that The Bell Witch, The Full Account was coming. And there was a lot of anticipation for that. But I still had some T's to cross and some I's to dot, and some facts that I had to get verified before it went to publication, which in turn made it late, which actually was a blessing. And I'll tell you about that in a minute.
Okay.
But so many people were expecting this big Bell Witch book, all three state versions with the stories, as well as a bunch of in depth research. I had to do something to hold everybody over. So in the interim, I wrote that little book called The Bell Witch Haunting, that little black book. You had it on the
Not
screen a
sure
while
why
ago.
this, there we go. It jumped on me here.
Yeah, that little thing there, because people were wanting to know something. So I put a little bit of research into that. Bottom line, I took a laptop computer down to the lake, uh, brought a lot of beer, and sat down there and typed it out one weekend, and then had it printed the next weekend, and then started, giving that out or selling that. So that's what happened with the Bell Witch Haunting. That has long since been out of print. So I'm not sure why
Okay.
Amazon is still showing it, unless maybe some people have some used copies still around.
It looks like it's showing, and I apologize. For some reason I lost internet here. We've got some bad weather here in the area, so I do apologize for that. If jump popping off there, it looks like it says that it's out of print with limited availability.
Right, exactly. Yeah, very much out of print. But what's odd? Sometimes I'll be doing a lecture and signing event, and somebody will actually bring an old copy of the Bell Witch Haunting for me to sign.
Oh wow.
And while we're on the subject of signing, we'll get back to these books, but
Hmm.
signing, Goblin Con.
Yes.
Somebody brought me a book to sign written by a competing author. In other words, it was a book somebody else wrote about the Bell Witch, which means it was a direct competition with me, but yet they wanted me to sign it. I didn't know what to think. He walked up to my booth with that competing book in his hand, and I didn't know whether to say "get the heck out of here" or what, And then he wanted me to sign it, and I thought about it for a minute, and I said, "That is priceless." And I'm
That's
like,
pretty cool.
what page? Where do you want me to sign it? He says, anywhere you want to. So I signed my name right above where the original author signed his.
I love it. I love
It's
it.
definitely one of those Coke versus Pepsi moments.
And you just never
It's
know.
hilarious.
You
So
never know.
you were asking about the books. The middle
Yes.
book on your Amazon screen, The Bell Witch, The Full Account,
Mhm.
that is called The Full Account because I cover not only the Tennessee Bell Witch, but the Bell Witch in North Carolina, as well as the Bell Witch in Mississippi. This thing,
Oh,
or these disturbances, followed this family through three different states, but the Tennessee version is what we all know and hear so much. The book is, what is it, 406 pages, I believe. It has the stories as well as, no, well, not just the old stories, but some more modern stories, a couple of things about some encounters I had, as well as all of the research behind all of the people and the places, different myths and theories. It contains a lot of footnotes, showing where the sources of my information, where I found it, discussion notes about some of the concepts mentioned in the book, an
Hmm.
index, complete full research book. So it's kind of
Oh,
like a Bell Witch, a massive collection of Bell Witch stories, but also like a Bell Witch encyclopedia as well.
okay.
And I
I didn't.
update that every 3 to 4 years, uh, with new research information, to
Mhm.
keep it relevant and keep it current.
Okay. I am not sure. I'm trying to copy the link and I am not sure what this is doing. Um, some weird technical difficulties here.
The
Bear
Bell
with me
Witch
one
doesn't
second.
want you to have it.
That's what I'm thinking. I keep trying to every time when I tried to copy it before, it kicked me off the internet. And then when I tried to copy this just then, it there we go. It put a bunch of copy that I was typing for a website. It was that's kind of strange.
Yeah, that was
So
that was definitely okay. The Bell Witch.
yeah. So we've got the links here in the comments, and we will put to the full Amazon site. But if you are watching the show after the fact, you'll be able to quick click on these links here. Um, anyways, please go on. Didn't mean to interrupt you there on
Oh,
that.
you didn't interrupt me at all. You couldn't interrupt me if you wanted to. The next book is, I think we looked at
Let's
Ghostly
see.
Cries from Dixie.
Yes.
Okay, this book is a collection of weird and ghostly tales from around the American Southeast. We cover 2 or 3 different locations for each state. My approach to this one was to research all of the history behind the locations, find out what is conducive to a haunting or what would lead people to say that these places are haunted. And then I share information from others as well as myself and what we have experienced at these places, either through touring or investigation. So a lot of good information in there, and uh, it's a really good read. I cover, everything from the well-known places like Waverly Hills and the St. Augustine Lighthouse, all the way to the more obscure places like the McRaven Mansion in Mississippi and the town of Jacksonville, Georgia. So a lot of area
Okay.
covered in there, and it's really a good read.
I really like that the perspective you take on that because so many times you'll see books from areas that just kind of gives a snippet about the story. It doesn't really excuse me dive too much into more about I mean a broad perspective. It just kind of dives into the general story about it and doesn't really go into the tourism and the investigation side of things. So I like
Exactly.
that you do that because that's extremely important. um,
Yeah,
because
I've
yeah,
read so many ghost story books like that. There's a lot of books out there
mhm,
like that, but
mhm.
most of them have very, very little depth. It's like such and such place is haunted. So and so has experienced such and such. If you ever go there, watch out. And to
Yes.
me, that's not a story. That's not a chapter.
No.
I want more depth. I want to know about the place. What makes a place special? What makes the place haunted? What makes people never forget the place?
Absolutely. And that can, I mean, it looks like with that book, it's 176 pages as well. So you really do give an in depth account and there's my links here. And it looks like the links are long to show on the page. So if you go on to Amazon and type in Pat Fitzhugh on that. Plus, we're going to also show you some other links and have some other quick links there in the comments where you can more easily get to this without the real long links there. But I love that you do that because it's it's very well worth the read and worth the purchase to take that in depth look on things. Let's
No,
see
yeah, I had a
here.
lot of fun writing it and collecting the information. And, when I visited those places, I had no idea at those times over the period of years I'd ever write a book.
Hmm.
But I do a lot of research and take a lot of meticulous notes, and I typically hold on to everything. So when I decided to write the books, I'm like, okay, I've got the notes right here. Let's get busy. Let's write it up.
I love it. And thank you, Sonia. Sonia copied the link for the Bell Witch book, and it looks like she was able to get the quick link there. Like I said, I'm having some really weird computer difficulties, but like you said, it never fails when I'm talking about certain topics. Things will go kind of crazy. And apparently now it's the same with the Bell Witch. So that doesn't
Yeah.
surprise me. So thank you, Sonia. We do have a couple questions here. And for any folks that are new and just tuning in, I have Mr. Pat Fitzhugh on here with the Bell Witch site here. And we're going to get to a couple questions on here. Melvin, he says, I remember the old Masonic Lodge around Jackson, Tennessee. We both experienced things there. Is there anything you can say about the old Masonic Lodge?
Yeah, there's a lot I can say about it. In fact, I think on my YouTube page, I think the video was still there.
Ah,
This is a place. It's an old church and also old Masonic lodge, and there's also an old graveyard on the property. It's outside of Jackson, Tennessee, and for a period of about 2 to 3 years, I investigated that. Sometimes with some public events, sometimes with small team events, and very interesting place with one heck of a history. Also, this Masonic lodge upstairs, this big room back during the Civil War that was used as a prison for Union troops. There was a minor skirmish, well, actually a pretty big skirmish, but not a lot of people knew about it, called the Battle of Britain's Lane, which was just up the road from this place. And the troops actually stayed the night before right behind this place. They camped out. That area is now wooded, but they brought prisoners into that place, into the church, went upstairs to the Masonic Hall, and they kept them up there. And there's even graffiti on the walls from
oh, wow.
some of the old walls from some of the old prisoners. And as far as the paranormal goes, there was a lot of activity there. There were some whispers picked up, a couple of EVPs out in the graveyard on one of the investigations, um, a lot of strange, unexplained EMF activity out in this
Hmm.
graveyard where there's probably no electricity within probably 2,000 feet. And with everybody turning their cell phones and equipment off, just leaving the EMF on, it was going off a lot of things. And if that video is still out there on my YouTube, you can actually listen to some of the EVPs. So, yeah, that was a very great, interesting place to investigate. Unfortunately, the caretaker and our contact person passed away.
Oh,
And the
and
people that have it now don't want any part of it, of the paranormal investigation or anything else there. Uh,
hmm.
they came up with some ideas, but nothing that was acceptable. So I'll just have to write that one off. That's now down nostalgia lane, so to speak.
I love that. And I love doing cemeteries, and especially when you can get that unexplained EMF and unexplained activity when you're in a place you know that there's no power. That's fantastic just in and of itself. What is the link to, or what is your YouTube channel called? I'm placing this in here so folks can go and watch that.
I think it's called Pat Fitzhugh. I never really got into YouTube that
Okay.
much. I put a few little uh, amateur videos out there here and there, but there's no way I could ever get enough subscribers to make it worthwhile. So I just don't fool with YouTube that much.
Gotcha.
That was,
And
you said
and
you had some
thank
other questions. I'm sorry.
yes, and thank you, Melvin. I adore Melvin. Let's see. Nancy was asking, and I believe she's asking about the Bell Witch. She said, was it about a property dispute?
No, not at all. The property dispute thing, was and has been a major myth associated with it, but it was debunked long ago. There was a property line dispute between John Bell and the secretary of the church, where he was an elder. The matter was heard by the church, and the secretary of the church was excommunicated and kicked out and was not allowed back into the church until years later after Mr. Bell had passed away.
Okay.
So that was that. And where people confuse that, or where people get all that, there was a fictional book, a highly fictional book written in 1894. And for the first time ever, it mentioned a lady who lived nearby and that she was like practicing black magic or something like that, which I also debunked that. Had nothing to do with her either. Her brother-in-law had a business dispute with Mr. Bell. And as a result, I guess the author of the fictional book decided to throw her name as a scapegoat. So when you
Wow.
look at that, and then some local accounts from the church records of where Mr. Bell had a property dispute with somebody else, it got all mixed up into this concoction and came out as being that Bell had a property line dispute with this crazy old lady. She came back from the dead to haunt him, and that was a Bell witch. Never mind the fact that she outlived him by 23 years. So, yeah, none of that was ever part of the Bell Witch legend until many years later when a fictional book was written in 1894.
Okay. Well, thank you, Nancy. And thank you, Pat, for clearing that up. Brittany says, is the Blair Witch Project movies based on fact or myth? I assume she's talking about the Blair Witch and not the Bell Witch.
Yeah, totally fictional. I have talked with the creators and some people who worked on that. It was absolutely a fictional thing. Some people confuse the Bell Witch and the Blair Witch because at one point there was a video out called Curse of the Blair Witch, which I think was a precursor to the actual Blair Witch Project, and somebody mentioned Bell Witch. But where the Blair Witch got its name was the main director or head honcho, his name was Myrick, I believe, of the Blair Witch Project. He needed something to call this thing as like a working title, and Witch came up, and he knew some other guy whose last name was Blair, so they called it Blair Witch as a working title, and it just kind of stuck and went from there.
I remember when that movie came out when I was in high school, I believe, and the fact that none of it was real and just it was really just a class project or something like that, wasn't it? That made that come about, I believe.
Yeah, it was it was based on the old. Everybody does it. The what you call it, the found footage.
Yes.
Movie device. Footage is found and these people out. I think they might have been doing some type of filming project or something out in the woods. And then this invisible thing scared the daylights out of them and made them yell a bunch of curse words. And, I remember when I saw the movie and I was asking the person I was with, so what, after it was over with, when are we going to see the witch? How do we know there's a Blair Witch? We haven't seen it. But yeah, very interesting movie.
And let's see, James says, I love to find evidence that either confirms or makes you question the locations and myths. I believe if you are a truly legitimate investigator, you have to follow the evidence and not just follow the story, And that's a really good point.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because there's so much out there. I know for myself, I love to read books of accounts that people have at these different locations when I'm going to do an investigation. But I don't like to read their experiences before I go to the location because I don't want that to change, the way I investigate or influence the activity that I have.
Yeah, that adds some fuel to what we call the power of suggestion.
Absolutely.
And we're all susceptible to that if we don't watch out. So we've got to be very careful. So you're smart by not wanting to hear the actual experiences.
Yeah. Now, do you find when you're going, and we'll talk about your investigating of some of these different locations. Whenever you travel to some of these places, such as the Masonic Lodge or Octagon Hall or anywhere that you're going to be investigating, do you do a lot of pre-research, or do you save your research until after you go and do your investigation?
Well, I typically will do some pre-research. Um, Not always a whole lot, but
Mhm.
just what I can find. There's times where I just can't find much when I try to, do the pre-research.
Mhm.
And I think it's important to understand at least the historical context of the place where you're investigating. But
Abs
there's another school of thought and another group of investigators who prefer not to know anything about the place, but to go in and let their senses and their own experiences teach them about it. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that either. Different people have different preferences.
Absolutely. Do you have d do you have any type of psychic or empathic or intuitive abilities that you rely on when you go to any of these locations?
Not to my knowledge. I've had people tell me I have, but I don't feel that I do.
Okay.
I,
Let's see.
I strictly go by my senses, sense
Mhm.
of smell, sense of hearing, sense of vision, and follow the instruments.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, Bob says, do you think that ghosts or spirits we see are spirits that have not crossed over?
That's a pretty popular theory. Um, we always hear the story of such and such. This person is stuck. They just haven't crossed over. Something needs to happen. Perhaps there was unfinished business, and then somebody does something or a series of things to help the person cross over, and then we hear that the presence is no longer there.
Mhm.
It could be. I don't really have any way to measure that. Looking at it from a research standpoint,
Mhm.
if I experience something and maybe come into contact, a communication with some type of entity or something, and I say or do something, and all of a sudden it goes away,
Mhm.
I don't know whether it went away because it crossed over or because maybe it didn't like the way I smell. I don't know, but
Very true. Very true.
yeah, I know that's a very kind of a superficial way to look at it, but you know, I don't know that if they crossed over. Some
Uh,
people, on the other hand, have said that, spirits have crossed over and they have been able to sense it or
mhm.
even have a communication of some type from the spirit validating that they crossed over. But I
Mhm.
personally haven't had that.
Okay. And that's a good question, Bob. And I actually really like your response there, where you really hit the nail on the head when you talk about it's when it's something that's hard to measure. I know that there's a lot of different ways of looking at the paranormal, as far as, and some of it is more just personal experience and that's really kind of hard to qualify whenever it is a personal experience or an intuitive type experience. Do you
Right.
find for yourself and your research, do you tend to stick more to the I guess I'm trying to think of the way to ask it, but more of the things that you can actually measure or qualify. Um, is that sort of like your scale whenever you're doing your research and qualifying your evidence?
Yeah, you need to be able to quantify your evidence.
Oh.
If there's some evidence, you can't really measure it.
Mhm.
You don't know anything about it. Somebody says they felt something.
Mhm.
Well, they may very well have felt it. I'm not going to question that.
Mhm.
But what they feel may not be the same thing somebody else feels. And then other people may not be able to feel it. So at the end of the day, we're investigating and you feel something blowing into your ear or pulling your
Mhm.
hair, which is common, fairly
Yeah.
common anyway in investigations. Well, unless they do that to me, I don't know that there's anybody going around there pulling hair. And God help them if they're going to try to pull my hair. There's just nothing there to pull. But, it always helps when there's evidence captured and it can be shared through some type of media where other people can see it,
Mhm.
or if somebody feels or hears something, if somebody else can validate it too. That's just,
Absolutely.
and again, that's just my take. And, sitting here with, you know, being a federally licensed ham radio operator, a
Mhm.
pilot, and a whole bunch of other things, I stick to the technical side of things.
That was actually going to be where I was going to go next. Is just from what amount of time we've talked, you seem like a very technical person within your professional career, with your hobbies and such. Um, is Are there any specific tools that you really like to use whenever you go on an investigation that you rely on a lot?
EVP, that comes second only to the human senses.
Okay.
But the human senses, that works out for me, but not necessarily as verifiable evidence for others. Because we get back
Yeah.
into the thing where one person senses or feels something, the other person might not be able to validate it. But personally, I trust my senses a lot more than I trust anything else.
Oh,
But when it
absolutely.
comes to other things, EVP.
Oh, very nice. Do you have a
You get-
process that you go through when you're essentially debunking or going through your EVPs and such to um, eliminate what might be essentially contamination or um, coming up, like I said, debunking to have a logical explanation for some of it? Is
Well,
there a process you do?
well, it depends on the location and the situation and time available. Um,
Mhm.
when the opportunity avails itself, I like to baseline, record in
Mhm.
these places, and just leave the recording on when it's not in an investigation. And I could get some pretty crazy stuff there too, but I also get some recurring things that seem to always be happening. And I can usually tell what they are or can find the source. So right there, I've got a filter set up by doing, a minimal baseline at that point.
Nice.
Also, when investigating as a group, I tell everybody if you make any noise, whether you sneeze or you burp or heaven forbid you fart, always tag it, say it
Yes.
out loud. So the person reviewing the evidence is not going to spend 3 days listening to you exhale or something. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, and so
So I
many
have to
things
tag
sound so different. Yeah, like
it. And
just when you walk, your shoes, your pants rubbing together, whatever, can if it can always
right,
sound very
if
different. Yeah,
somebody, whispered, oh, and hey, did you hear that?
yeah,
So,
exactly.
you get things like that too. And also sometimes you can really help make out things through EVP by changing the equalization on the sound setting with
Mhm.
different hertz frequencies. You can also do like a white noise or a pink noise mask and other things that can filter out certain things so you can bring levels of other things up and get a better understanding. And EVP is not the only thing I use, but it's one of the main things I count on. It's just more realistic and harder to debunk than a
Yes,
lot of the other things.
absolutely. I like that.
And I got to
James,
go
oh,
ahead.
go ahead. No, 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 please.
I was going to say I got a killer EVP one time over at Octagon Hall. In
Oh,
fact, I've had many killer EVPs there. That's one of my favorite places. I haven't been there in years. I'm going to have to go back, but I used to do an awful lot of investigating there. I also had public investigation events and everything. Well, one of those events, we had a whole lot of people buy tickets, so we split up into several groups and
mhm,
we alternated around the property all night long. The group that I was leading, one of our stops was the graveyard in the very back where
Right.
enslaved people who had worked there were buried. And
Oh.
ironically, there was one, and I've heard maybe more than one Confederate soldier buried back there too.
Hmm. Hmm.
And on that particular night, we were out there for about 35 minutes, nothing, no activity, anything whatsoever. And we just about froze to death. And I got to talking to one of the ladies there and, thinking, what could we do? Is there anything we could do? We don't have any trigger objects with us. And, let's try something here. So I had her look up on the internet the names of some old religious hymns that were sung by enslaved people back in the early 1800s.
Okay.
Then find recordings, even modern recordings, of those hymns being sung by like church choirs and other people that are on the internet. So we
Yeah.
found some and we filled that graveyard with all those old uh, African American hymns that night. And talking about the dead come to life. I mean,
Oh.
all types of activity. But the killer EVP was when all this was going on, we hear a man's voice on the EVP shout the word lady. Then we heard kind of a very steady cadence, like a feet walking on the ground and some metal clanking together like shackles. And I think
Wow.
that's
Okay.
one of the most eerie EVPs I've ever heard.
Yeah. Wow. That's incredible. And I mean, music has always been such a good trigger item for us, but what a
Oh, yeah.
way to take it back to
Yeah.
not just the style of song, but or the type of song, but also the style that it's being sung. I would imagine that that really would just make things come alive.
Oh, yeah. And I've seen that happen before at places. I
Mhm.
mean, people will put out different trigger objects, like a doll
Mhm.
or maybe a cigar or something like that.
Mhm.
But when music starts playing, a lot of times you get things. Now, I know there's a skeptical side to that too, saying, okay, you're playing music, you're having RF frequency, your phone or whatever you're playing music with is generating
Mhm.
EMF. But at the same time, I'm not talking necessarily EMF, but I mean,
Mhm.
people are getting EVPs. People have felt scratches and then shown the rest of us where the scratches were. So more than
Mhm.
just, EMF.
Absolutely, absolutely. I know we did, and we actually sung this. I was at Octagon Hall. It was probably my second. It was my second investigation there. It was the second night of a two-night investigation, and typically, I investigated on a team with all men, but we did have another lady that came on the investigation. And so the men sat outside, and we sat up in the hospital there, and we were actually singing Amazing Grace. And as we were singing it, we had a third lady join in, and she basically hummed, and we asked about praying for the folks who were there inside of the old hospital part. And after we finished praying, we had an African American woman say amen afterwards. And I mean, we had no music other than ourselves, just humming and singing. And it was one of those experiences that we heard something with our own ears as a disembodied voice, but when you went back to listen to the audio, you could clearly hear that there was a third person singing. And I have no explanation for that because we actually didn't have any EMF or anything from the phones
Yeah,
going.
there you go. EVP for the win.
Yeah,
I mean, you
absolutely.
know who is there and who is
Yeah.
not.
Yes.
And you know what voices or what sounds belong and what sounds don't. And you
Absolutely.
also know when these voices come in, right after something cues them in, like maybe a word somebody says or a
Hmm.
particular verse of a song. and then
Hmm.
you hear the tone of voice, and you can also make a correlation back to things that maybe were asked earlier or people you learned about when studying the history. So yeah, EVP for the
Absolutely.
win. But
Absolutely.
yeah, and where was this now? Did you say
That was
a
at
hospital?
Octagon Hall.
Oh,
Yeah,
at Octagon. Yep.
up in the makeshift hospital there on the third floor.
Did you ever see the wheelchair roll?
No, but I've heard a lot of stories about that.
Yeah, I haven't seen it roll either. I've been in the room leading investigations up there, and people say that they saw it inch forward a little bit, but I haven't
Hmm.
seen it. They did have a video. This has been years ago of it rolling on its own. I don't think there was anybody even up in that room at the time, and their surveillance camera picked it up.
Yeah, and apparently the mannequins will move as well on their own.
Well, now that's something that might scare me right there.
I
I
don't
haven't
think
seen
I'd
it.
wanna see that happen because 'cause they've got so many creepy mannequins anyways, and then,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, in that I'm not sure. I know Beth was on here a few minutes ago. I'm not sure if she's still on. She could probably confirm some of that, but I know in the hospital room, one of the, mannequins has moved, and I wanna say in the, main sleeping quarters, there was, a mannequin that moved in there, and, um, it takes a lot to creep me out, but I don't think I would wanna see a mannequin move.
Yeah, that would kind of like be over the top. But yeah, with Octagon Hall, the late great Bear, who
Yes.
was a mentor to many, including myself, he always had this saying, and it was that the hall never disappoints.
Yes.
And that's
Yes.
true. I don't care when you go. If you stay there long enough, you're going to get some action. I mean, it's a big
Something.
place. You have to cover a lot of ground. You may have to go to 3 or 4 places on the property before you get action. But once you do, I mean, you've got the action and it's worth it. Definitely
It
one of my
really
favorite
is.
places.
100% mine too.
Def,
I mean,
definitely gonna
yeah,
have to go
'cause
back there soon.
yes, yes, and, like I said, Beth is on here, and, she took over Bear's position and, is doing just a fantastic job,
Oh,
and
great. I didn't know that. That's great. That's wonderful.
yes, yes, she's doing a good job keeping his legacy going as well as, keeping the hall accessible for people. Um, let's see here. James asks, "Have you ever built any of your own equipment?"
No, I have not.
Okay. And let's see. Bob says, "So I've always read when you die, it is a religious experience. So beautiful words cannot describe it. My question, why would a ghost drag around chains and shackles after experiencing the above?"
I think he's talking about the EVP that I was talking
Yes.
about with the shackle sound.
Yes.
Um, I wouldn't classify that as a ghost. I would classify that as more of what some people call it stone recording
Hmm.
type thing, where
Like a
certain
residual?
events, yeah, very similar to a residual haunting, but it's not necessarily a haunting, but it is where the land itself or the rocks, something in the land has recorded certain spiritual residue, and events play themselves back from time to time. That's what I would see there, or what I would
And
attribute it to.
that's a really good point that both of you bring up on that because, um, I've had people ask similar questions to that. That if do you think that at that point in time when you all were playing the music and essentially triggering the activity, do you think you triggered rather than just a response, more of an event? um, than anything it because it almost sounds like you triggered residual as well as intelligent on that.
Well, I think in the case of that particular case, I think that the sound of the gospel hymns being
Mhm.
sung probably wasn't the first time that hymns were sung at that graveyard.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they buried their dead there. So,
Mm-hmm.
I would think people would gather around, even if it's just a small group of people, just the person's family, or it could have been the other enslaved people too. So I'm sure those hymns had been sung there before.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got that. And, that could have tipped off something that, like back into the stone recording, things like that,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and,
Absolutely.
who's to
Yeah.
say, you know, ideally and ultimately what I would have done if I'd had the time and, all the resources and all of that was go back in there at another time,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
put on some recorders, rent a set of shackles and walk
Mm-hmm.
through there slowly with the shackles on and
Mm-hmm.
see if the EVP picks up enslaved people singing those gospel hymns.
Absolutely. It's almost like a
Then
reverse.
if we could do it with the reversal, then that's going to
Yeah.
validate more of the trigger part of
Mm-hmm.
something that's residual or stone recording.
Because I
That's what I
think
would do.
I've always wondered that because because obviously you have your intelligent and your residual. I've always wondered if you can trigger I know it's easier to trigger an intelligent response, but I've always wondered if you can trigger a residual response. And it almost sounds like if you could go back and recreate, taking essentially the residual that you thought you captured and playing that back to see if you could trigger it to capture the intelligent. I think it would show that, if you could capture that just by going back and reversing it. I know what I'm saying probably doesn't make a lot of sense, but
It
um,
does. It's just something that, I don't know if any research in the field has gone far enough to say that, with any certainty. You could look at it algebraically. You have these
mhm,
numbers on this side of the equation, the other numbers on the other side. Then you
mhm,
look at commutative properties of mathematics. Say, you've got the hymn music and it
mhm.
triggers the walking sounds. Can we do the walking sounds in shackles and trigger either the hymns being sung or some other sound of something happening out there at that field long ago?
Absolutely. And then Brittany says, "What is the scariest experience you have had?"
Mm.
I know that's
Well,
a hard question.
I don't scare easily, unfortunately, but I think that's actually good. Like I think I mentioned earlier, the living are scarier than the dead. Um, and this line of work I've been in for 48 years, something like that anyway.
Mhm.
I've met a lot of different people and I've met a few scary people, stuff like that. I think those experiences have been more scary than anything paranormal I've ever run into. I will tell you that once upon a time, two of us were in Waverly Hills by ourselves,
Okay.
um, with permission, investigating one night, just two of us. And at one point, we sat down in a room that had been the old library. I can't remember, it's maybe on the third floor, I believe, something like that. Sat down, turned off our cameras, and we both saw what looked like a nurse or a medical assistant or somebody in very old looking clothes walking past the door down the hall. Except they
Wow.
weren't really walking. Whatever this thing was, it was more like it was standing straight up like a person walking, but there was no bounce. It was like it was just floating by,
Okay.
and that's strange.
Wow.
As a researcher, I
Yeah.
can't say it's paranormal because I can't prove it, but
Mhm.
I'll say it's definitely something I would not consider normal. And it made me kind of not really afraid, but really got my adrenaline rush in there for a while. And of course, we had
Absolutely.
just turned off our cameras, um, as always, so we have no way to actually prove that this even happened, even though the both of us did see it.
Well, that's validation there in and of itself, is that two of you, of course, validation of a
Well,
personal experience.
Right, two idiots going in and investigating a place, and both of them validate something.
Right, right. And let's see here. I know we're getting here toward the end of the show here, so people are getting their last minute questions in. Um, Bob says, "Do you suppose science cannot explain the paranormal, but more religion?"
Okay.
That's a tough one too.
Mm, I could make it pretty easy because, especially this last year, I've had to talk about this a lot.
Okay.
Not everyone's beliefs about the paranormal, but many people's beliefs about the paranormal go back to their religious views and religious beliefs, which in turn go back to their very early formative years when they developed those beliefs, or those beliefs and ideals were instilled into them, and they're very deeply rooted beliefs. I think the paranormal, um, well, actually, Keith Age, I think, said it best one time, that the paranormal is a faith-based hobby.
Mhm.
Now, I
Mhm.
wouldn't necessarily say it's a hobby for everybody, but much of people's feelings about the paranormal, stuff like that, go back to their religious upbringing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I've heard different people speak about, and most of these people tend to not be religious, um, speak about sort of separating the religion from the paranormal. For me personally, because I am a person of faith, I see the two together myself,
Mhm.
but I know that there are other people because maybe that people get into it for different reasons. There are different reasons for their paranormal journey, and
Mhm.
I think it would be for me personally, it would be hard to separate it. But I guess if someone is not religious, but then you got to get into the difference between, like you said, with faith based. Um, there is a difference in faith doesn't always play as huge of a part in other religions as it
Yes,
does,
right.
so yeah,
Religious views and religious beliefs can also mean people with no religion at all.
absolutely, absolutely,
You know,
and
that's a belief there. It's a belief of a religious nature that they don't
mhm,
believe in religion. Then there are
mhm,
people who are religious and, faith-based, and there's thousands of different religions out there.
mhm,
And they have different views about the paranormal.
mhm. But I think that the word faith, and whether it's you use it as faith-based hobby or faith-based, whatever you want to call it, I think that it is very faith-based because
Yeah,
it doesn't have to be faith in a creator or faith in a ultimate being, but
right.
you have to have a form of faith if you're watching my investigations,
Mhm.
and as a live, or if I'm watching yours, you have to have faith in that person that you're watching as well, that they're being honest and that they're being forthright. Or when I say there was nobody else
Absolutely.
in here, you have to have faith that I went back and dotted my I's and crossed my T's. So regardless of what your faith in an ultimate being is, there is a lot of faith that has to play a part in
You're
this
right.
if you're watching or listening to somebody
There's
too.
faith, faith from a religious standpoint, faith and trust as far as other investigators and
Mhm.
location owners go, too.
Yes. Yes.
And
Absolutely.
yeah, and I know
Yeah.
there's a lot of different things said about the paranormal by a lot of different religions. It seems like it's really picked up over the last year or so.
Mhm.
Um, if you own an EMF meter, it means you're a devil worshiper, or really far out stuff. Um, and I've had to defend that a few times
Mhm.
myself. Not devil worship, of course.
Right, right.
We all have different views. I was raised in the Christian church. I
Mhm.
attended school at what at the time was considered the most narrow-minded, strict Christian school in the United States. A lot of people
Wow.
don't know that. But yeah, I hear all this, oh, if you read this about the Bell Witch, you're worshiping demons, or you go trick or treating, you know, and I'm like, wake up, people. I mean, I know that's your religious beliefs,
Yeah.
but I keep paranormal and religious discussions separate. So that's
Mhm.
not why I'm going to sit here and tell you 45 different pieces of scripture that say you're wrong. And there's one that
Yeah.
even says you should get into the paranormal. So, I don't go into all that and tell people
Mhm.
that, but it just goes to show there are so many different religious beliefs out there about the
Mhm.
paranormal. Very polarized
Very much.
area, very much so.
Very much, and that's something I actually am planning. It's probably not going to happen this year because we're getting so close to Christmas, anyways. But that's a discussion I actually want to have in a panel based show next year because there is, and it's not pointing any specific religions out, but just talking about that because I know that that's something that people who do the paranormal regardless of what their reasoning for getting into it or their research side of it is. That's something that a lot of paranormal location owners, paranormal investigators, and such face. Some people, it's an important thing. Some people, it's not. But that's definitely a discussion that I'm interested to have next year on a panel to have some people from different sides of things just to kind of talk about that perspective.
Well, I
Because
will, I will definitely grab some popcorn and take a seat. I think that's going to be uh, either that or invite me up there, one of the two.
absolutely,
But hey, at least
absolutely.
somebody's finally inviting me to get on some panels, so I guess that's good.
Hey, if you would be willing to come on our panel and talk, I would love to have you on that show because it is an interesting topic that I've spoke with different people about that and like I
Yeah,
said, we're not going to get into saying this religion is wrong or that's wrong, but just the different perspectives and how it plays into the paranormal, I think is going to make for an interesting
yeah.
discussion.
And
Yeah.
earlier this year, there was a Paracon, a pretty big one too, that was protested.
Oh, wow.
And, the interesting or the ironic thing about it, now I was not there, I didn't see it, but I know the people who ran the Paracon and we talked about it.
Mm.
Right across the street from the Paracon was a church. And standing in front of that church were all these protesters. And I mean, very
Wow.
fiery, judgmental protesters, the hellfire and brimstone people. But
Yeah.
those protesters were from another church. And the church that they were standing in front of got mad at them for standing in front of their church protesting. I mean, it was crazy because everybody thought that the church across the street was protesting when these guys up here protesting on the sidewalk in front of there were from some other church. So
Wow.
it was interesting though, but
Very much so. Let's see. And James says, my beliefs are biblically based, but not necessarily popular beliefs. And I mean, I think that seems to be a lot of the case. And like I said, this is a discussion for a different time that it's almost like at that point you're sort of having to defend two different things. We're already with the paranormal having to when somebody, when they find out that you're into the paranormal, they already look at you like, okay, you believe that stuff is real. And so you're already having to
um,
defend that, let alone whenever you
labeling
go and, yeah.
labeling and stereotyping has always been an issue. You know, it seems the paranormal is really popular and everything, but when you look at it and compare it with the masses, it's a very small niche group, very
Very, very
small
much.
compared to the masses. So, and about the only point at which the study of the paranormal uh, has a cross section with the masses as at the
Mhm.
point where paranormal gets on TV. And then that's a whole other subject there.
Absolutely. Now, have you found, because you've been doing this, for what, 40 something years now?
More years
Um,
than I can remember,
okay,
or that I
so
want to
in
remember.
in your time of doing this, have you found that the fact that paranormal has become essentially more mainstream, do you think that that's helped the paranormal, or do you think the fact that it's gotten more mainstream is something that's sort of hurt the research side of things?
Well, you got to look at it. There are essentially three different sides to it. You've got the thrill seeking side, who's not
Mhm.
really interested in researching, but just wanting to go out and get scared. Then
Mhm.
you have the researchers, most of whom take a serious approach to it, and they're looking for some truth, looking for answers and ways to
Mhm.
advance the field. Then you
Mhm.
have the entertainment side, which is where the paranormal crosses over into the mainstream. And I call
Mhm.
that paratainment.
Yeah.
And has it helped or hurt? It's it's a double-edged sword. It
Mhm.
has helped the paranormal in that it has opened more people's eyes to it and brought more people into
Mhm.
paranormal conventions and other paranormal events, mainly people who are first timers or who just want to get a feel of what it's like to be like those people on TV. But bringing those people in, some of those people will stick around and, learn the reality of it
Mhm.
and learn how to investigate and turn out to make some really good investigators and researchers. But a
Mhm.
lot of them won't. And also, when you have those increased people coming into conventions and other events, that helps paranormal vendors
Yes.
because the more in traffic influx you have, the more revenue you're going to get. So for those
Absolutely.
people selling things or like renting out paranormal locations, yeah, it helps there. But
Mhm.
then where it has done irreparable harm is the image that under which it portrays the paranormal. What
Yeah.
the public thinks that those of us who are serious do versus what we really do. You know, I
Yes.
can't I can't even count how many times I've gone to locations trying to set up an event and all they say is, "Oh, okay, so you're going to run around here screaming demon and blah blah blah, and you're going to find a demon in your microwave, and all you guys are going to do is go up there, get drunk, tear up the place, you know, or you guys are going to be in here cursing at my grandmother's spirit and doing all this provocation." So it gives the masses a very false narrative of what we're
Mhm.
really about.
That's
So
that
that's
is
how it
very true.
hurts. So yeah, it's a double-edged sword.
Gotcha. And so, speaking on that, on conventions, because we're working on wrapping things up here. Um, anything big that you want to promote coming up? I know you mentioned your book. You've got some. You're kind of, I guess, gearing up for 2026.
Yeah, doing a lot of gearing up. There is the Bell Witch Enigma book, which I'm planning on having out in 2026. There is not an actual release date yet. I'm going to take my time. I'm going to do it right. So it'll be out whenever it's done correctly and out. Uh, with regards to other things, I'm in the process of changing some of my event policies.
Hmm.
And until I can get that done and um, everything, all the T's crossed and I's dotted on that, I'm not booking
Mhm.
any events right now. Um, I do have, there are two that I've committed to. Not ready to announce those yet, but two I've committed to from talking to them, doing those events this year. And, they said, we'll see you next year. So I assume they plan on having me for those two. So those two are a done deal or should be.
Okay. Mhm.
But I hope to be doing some more, announcing some more events soon. And, I think like we talked before the show, I'm looking at trying to also add something more steady more stable and more central to Tennessee and Kentucky into my bag of tricks, so to speak. So, I'm looking at opportunities for collaboration, maybe working at haunted locations, doing stuff there,
Mhm.
essentially doing something unique and something big, and some collaborations. And there's a lot of possibilities there. It's just I
Mhm.
haven't found any, or none of them have found me over the last couple of years, but I'm still looking out for those.
Wonderful. And if folks want to find out more information, we've got your website up here. We've got that in the show notes. But if folks want to follow along with what you're doing, new releases, events, and announcements and such, what is the best place for folks to be able to do that?
I would recommend the Facebook page for me. I have the Facebook fan page out there. And also, there's a Facebook page called Bell Witch Full Account, which is for the Bell Witch book that I wrote. I also have the site called patfitzhugh.com, which has a listing of upcoming events. And also, for in depth Bell Witch research, there's a site out there called bellwitch.org.
Okay. Okay. And we're going to pull all this up right quick. We're putting the links over here. If you go to the Pat Fitzhugh fans, I've put that link in here, and you can follow along on Facebook. Um, Pat does amazing recaps of his shows that he does and events that he does, and so you definitely want to go on there, check out that page. And let's see here. I'm going to we pulled up his website, and then we also have, and we did the Amazon page and the Bell Witch page that he spoke about. It's bellwitch.org. And I love this. I mean, this really breaks everything down. We're going to put this on here as well. So, like I said, if you are watching this show in the replay, you can go back and you can pull up the quick links here in the comments section. So, Pat also has a great IMDb page talking about all of his appearances. You definitely want to follow him and check out some of his books, because just a wealth of knowledge when it comes. I mean, I could probably talk to you for another couple hours just about investigations,
I was going
because
to say, can we extend this maybe for about 5 or 6 more hours, and
sure,
maybe
sure.
I'll have to put some more coffee up here in our little red solo cup. But yeah, this is one of those that shows I think we could go on forever and ever on. I do want to make it a point to get to the Scott County Jail and some of the other locations up that way sometime soon, and learn more about
Yes.
those, get some investigation time in there as well. And hey, I'd love it if you could come this way. I'm sure we could find some places to investigate, or at least get into some trouble or something.
Absolutely. We're not too far. We're not too far from there. So I'd absolutely love that. Would love to have the opportunity to investigate with you. When I had on there that you were going to be a guest on my show, I had multiple people, Melvin, Joseph Eskew, Belle Stewart, multiple people that reached out that said they were really excited, that they just think the world of you. And
Oh,
yeah, just very, very many kind comments. So, so absolutely, I would consider it an honor to be able to do an investigation with you. And
oh,
I would
that's so.
love to, yeah, I would love to have you back on the show as well. And we can, a lot of the time we just scratch the surface when we have folks on here talking about,
Yeah.
um, you know, kind of getting to know each other. But I'd definitely like to have you on to delve into some more topic based as far as investigations go. I know we talked about that. We've kind of been all over the board with different things, but maybe we can do some more topic driven when it comes to some of the different locations you've investigated. Because,
Yeah.
yeah,
Sure, I'd love
'cause-
to. And let me throw something at you.
Okay.
When I posted today about this interview tonight, I
Mhm.
don't think I've ever gotten as many likes on a Facebook page about a podcast interview as I did today about yours.
Oh, well, thank you.
So that's really great. So guess what that tells me is I need to whatever the word is, I need to stick close to you.
Oh, well, thank you, Pat. I appreciate that. We've got the best group over here that watches and interacts and asks questions. So yeah, absolutely. We will definitely have you back on. And guys, please go on and check out Pat's books. Like I said, you'll be glad you did. They're nice, big, thick books. And if you get the opportunity where Pat is speaking in your area, you definitely want to listen to some of his lectures, because that was one of the things a lot of people were talking about with Goblin Con. I was there solo at my booth and didn't get to really leave my booth very much. And I hated that I didn't get to go in and listen. But I had a lot of people, they were talking about your lecture afterwards. I know you filled the house, and a lot of people were talking about it. So guys, definitely go check out any of the lectures if Pat is going to be speaking in your area. So, like I said, there won't be a show next Thursday night because we've got Thanksgiving, and I thought about doing something maybe on a Wednesday night, but I'm hosting Thanksgiving at my house here this year, and got a lot of things to take care of. And I know a lot of you do too, with things that are going on. So we will not have a show next week. And the week after that, we will have Miss Dee Dee Jabrell on. And I'm just going to pull up real quick before there. I mentioned her dream journal. And here is the link where, let's see, I thought I had it. I think when it pulled me off earlier, here it is. Um, you can go on and you can purchase her 30-day dream mapping journal. And she's going to be on. We're going to be talking about all things dreams, and a lot of she's got a couple new experiments that she's working on. And she's been a guest on the show before, and we've kind of dived into some very interesting topics. So you can go on there, you can purchase her book, and start mapping your dreams before we have her on the show in 2 weeks. So, anyways, until then, Pat, I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful holiday, and you folks over in the chat room, I hope you do as well. And we'll look forward to seeing you all then. So, until then, good night, everyone.
Hey, thank you. It's been an honor.